So my name is Shana. I'm the sales manager of APAC at Singular, and I'll be your host today and then lead the webinar through entire hour. And we also have all of our experts to tell us about some useful tips and information to help you succeed in marketing. So before we jump into the discussion, can you guys give us some brief introduction about yourself and also your company? And Eran, do you want to go first?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Shana. So hi, everyone. I'm Eran. I'm the CTO and co-founder at Singular. Singular is the next generation marketing analytics and attribution company. We help growth teams analyze their marketing campaigns, understand their results, and how to optimize for their growth, and work with the largest brands out there, from Netmarble to Rovio to EA, Warner Brothers, Twitter, LinkedIn, and we're always happy to chat.
Thank you. And Shiraz, do you want to go next?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shiraz Kabir, Head of Revenue for APAC at Liftoff plus Vungle. Liftoff plus Vungle is the largest independent growth platform to fuel the mobile app growth cycle. Our product portfolio consists of an ML-driven programmatic DSP in Liftoff, mobile monetization in Vungle, an influencer marketing platform in JetFuel, an end-to-end playable ad creation platform in Tricensa, and all things game intelligence and analytics in Game Refinery. So as you can see, it's an end-to-end platform. We are a global company. We've been operating in APAC from 2016, work across verticals, across pretty much all countries in Asia Pacific at the moment, and predominantly in the app first and app-only spaces.
Great. And last but not the least, Cynthia, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Shana. Hello, everyone. My name is Cynthia, and I'm in charge of Mintegral APAC. Mintegral is a leading global ad network providing multiple solutions for global publishers. Our product lines including monetizing SDK, advertiser self-serving platform, Mintegral DSP, DMP, ad exchange, and our in-house creative studios, etc. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you, Cynthia. So actually today we are not going to talk about things like SKN network or even data optimization techniques, but in fact, today's topic is all about winning with the full funnel marketing strategy. So scalable and sustainable growth is not just about single install or just a purchase. It's about acquiring, monetizing, and retaining high value users in the long run. So think beyond optimizing for CPI to optimizing for LTV. And that means instead of just simply comparing one marketing strategy to the other, today's marketers are all expected to become all-around players and balance between acquisition, monetization, and re-engagement efforts to get the most from each stage of the entire growth activities. And also, before we start, I just want to give you a short notes about our webinar today. So because we're going to talk about our information through a fireside chat style, so we might not be able to answer every question during the webinar, but at the end of the webinar, we're going to leave 5 to 10 minutes for the live Q&A session. So if you have any questions, please feel free to just submit your answer anytime through the Q&A Zoom panel. So, and also if you're shy, you can also like submit your questions anonymously, and we're all here to help you. Also, just another note is that we're going to record this session, so you will be able to get this tomorrow, and you can share it with your colleagues or even watch it again online. So let's get started. And first, I would like to have our CTO from Singular, Eran, to walk us through the introduction. So could you please tell us why the life cycle marketing is rising, and also what's so important about looking into growth loop and balancing between acquisition, monetization, and engagement?
Yeah, of course. So, the question of why even the trend of like the growth loop and looking at the entire lifetime has even emerged. And I think that in the industry in general, the industry has understood that growth isn't just about getting new installs, because if you're just getting the installs and they're not doing anything in the app, then it's not worth your spend, right? So obviously you want to make sure that you're getting the results of what you're investing in. And as you're thinking about the lifetime of these users, the experience of these users, the payback for that spend usually takes more than a few days. You need to think about the entire lifetime of the user to understand how to optimize really everything, get the most of your marketing spend. So if you think about it, when you want to really optimize your marketing, you need to think about the entire kind of full funnel of your growth campaigns. And you need to think about the loops from there. It's also about repeat purchases, getting the users back to your app, thinking about how to monetize actually from them, and kind of thinking about the retention. So there is an entire shift of methodologies for the growth teams to think about everything from acquisition to retention to monetization to engagement to get the most out of your marketing spend. And that's kind of the reasoning behind the growth loops.
Okay, thank you, Eran. So optimizing full funnel marketing is very important, but how to manage it is the question. So Shiraz, I actually want to turn to you and ask, do different marketing teams work on acquisition and monetization campaigns and control the budget separately? And if that's the case, how do they stay aligned?
I don't think there is a one size fits all. I guess it depends on what vertical the company is operating in. What is the size of that company? I'll just take an example. A lot of the customers that we work with have either majority revenues skewed towards IAP, that's in-app purchases, or to an extent 50-50 on IAP and IA. In cases where it's either a 50-50 split or majorly skewed towards IAP, you do have teams that are more specialized performance marketers, specialized monetization professionals who are led by maybe two executives. But ultimately, I think it all boils down to LTV, right? You're in the business to generate revenue, and revenue is ultimately one line item. So it's owned by maybe one lead globally, thereafter split into monetization and UA, RE, and so on. But again, more mature companies with more diverse product portfolio and revenue lines would have that mix. And in some cases, it might just be the same team member handling both.
Great. And Cynthia, do you see anything different from your side?
Well, I think it depends on what kind of category they are managing. So taking hyper-casual games as an example, in Mintegral, the team in charge of UA and the team in charge of monetization is actually the same team. And besides, from my observation, in many of the hyper-casual gaming studios, they are doing the same, like they have the same team to manage both of the business. So because for hyper-casual games, the revenue of hyper-casual games mainly comes from in-app advertising, not IAP. So the metrics on monetization side will usually have strong influence on the bid rates and on the campaign, the budget allocation on UA side. So that's why they need to combine the team roles together so that the advertiser can monitor the data and do the campaign adjustments in time. Yeah, but if it's not hyper-casual, if we are talking about other categories like hardcore games or utility apps, then UA and monetization business are usually managed by different teams. And in the case of Mintegral, we separated our UA operation team into several groups. So each group will be focused on one vertical. For example, we have retargeting campaign team, and we have hardcore gaming campaigns and utility campaigns, and each vertical will be assigned to one group to take charge of.
Great. So thank you for the explanation, Cynthia. And now it is also important to understand what true ROI is and why it should be the main key KPI for the entire growth organization. Eran, could you please give us some clarification on what true ROI is?
Sure. So I think Shiraz and Cynthia also described it in a very good way. When you're thinking about monetization, there's multiple ways to monetize, right? You can do in-app purchases, like in your game, or you can monetize from ads, right? And when you're thinking about the performance of your campaigns, you need to really combine everything to make sure to get your true return on investment, right? Your true ROI, your true ROAS, which includes all these components together. Otherwise, you're not really looking at the most accurate results of your performance. So when you think about the growth loop and kind of optimizing your campaigns in the long term, we want to make sure that number one, you're getting for all your users, you know exactly what are the in-app purchases that they're getting and how much of these. And number two are the ads that they're actually seeing, right? If you have like both the combinations, we want to combine these together to understand like the value, the maximum value of these users. But then you also need to think about like when in ROAS, you have like the spend part, right? You need to think about the cost. So we want to make sure you also have the most accurate cost to understand like the true ROAS. And if you're thinking about retargeting, for example, or engagement, also Cynthia kind of mentioned, we talk about retention later on, then those also cost money as well, right? If you're kind of paying for the users to come back to your app. So that can also be included in your calculation. So again, eventually, everyone wants to optimize by the true ROI, get the most accurate meaning of your performance. And to do that, you need to connect all of the different components to get to the most accurate and best number.
Okay, thanks for your clarification on what true ROI is and also why it is important. But Shiraz, I also wonder, how do advertisers allocate their budget between branding, acquisition, and re-engagement campaigns? Is there any tip for balancing these marketing strategies?
That's an interesting question, and one that's come up a few times with our mobile heroes. As you know, Mobile Heroes by Liftoff is a global community of app marketers connecting, sharing, and learning from one another. Most businesses in our space have built an expertise around quantifiable marketing, right? You put in $1, you know exactly how you're going to get $1, 20 cents, $52. It's become a very fine-tuned math. And some established companies over years have fine-tuned this math. They have a high-performance engine that gives a clear picture of investment versus returns. In early stages, and I would assume that SEA sort of has gone through that early stage growth in the last few years. Most companies have finite budgets, and majority focus is on crafting, building, and fine-tuning this machinery. Investments are very data-driven, and there is little scope for non-targeted spends. In most cases, branding is a very small line item, often single digits. But as we have seen also in Southeast Asia, and I'll give some examples as we go along, as businesses mature and reach a level of penetration in the market and a critical mass of users, branding plays a bigger role with new positioning, building brand awareness for new users, changing perceptions. You would have seen Lazada and Shopee spending a lot on offline hoardings, bus stop skinning, a lot of the scooters, the delivery scooters on the roads have advertisements of these major e-commerce brands. They sign up big celebrities. I saw Jackie Chan recently, sports celebrities, and so on. So channels can be the same, but objectives are different. Metrics from a branding perspective are reach, frequency, and unique users. Performance is more CPAs, ROAS, and LTV. And to answer your question, branding, I think, can be anywhere between 5 to 20% of overall marketing spends. But it is more, I think, need-based. Frequency is less, unless you're in a winner-takes-all place, which are some of the brands I just mentioned who just dominate that space. That's a very different math when it comes to that. But most early-stage or mid-stage companies, large majority is performance marketing budgets with very little brand spends. And you would have also seen of late, and Airbnb put out their Q4 earning results recently. They have used PR. In fact, they are more over-indexing towards branding versus performance. So they've used PR very effectively. Coinbase recently for Super Bowl, they took up some TV slots, but very, very smartly used a QR code to be able to connect that offline to online link. So it just shows our space is constantly evolving, and things are changing rapidly. Performance will stay, but I think the mix will change from a brand performance to a branding. But for now, most budgets are going to be sitting on the performance side.
All right, thank you for your answers. So now we have kind of covered the basic understanding of how full funnel marketing works and how to balance between acquiring, monetization, and also engaging. But now we want to learn more about learn more about scaling acquisition strategies. So Shiraz, for you again, could you please tell us what are some top KPIs that marketers should measure and optimize for acquisition campaigns today?
Well, on a lighthearted note, I would say the question to ask oneself is what sets the cash registers ringing, right? Whatever brings in the money is what one should be optimizing for. But it's easier said than done. Like for an e-commerce app, the company really doesn't make money when someone downloads the app. They don't make money when someone registers. I think these are all good touch points, but they're always a stepping stone towards the final event. Measure what matters and optimize to that metric. In some cases, the final metric doesn't take too long to reach. In some cases, it's deep down in the funnel. And that's where I think a solid data sciences team can add a lot of value to the business, because they can find the correlation between a mid-funnel metric to a final metric. And as long as you're optimizing to the mid-funnel metric, there is a good probability that you would end up having a successful final metric, and then you would end up making money. And as your business scales, one needs to keep an eye in seeing whether this correlation continues to hold or not. So Eran touched on this earlier. I think the holy grail for all app advertisers or online advertisers is going to be ROAS, return on ad spend. We have a model called CPR, cost per revenue, which optimizes for revenue and not for actions. So unlike CPA, which optimizes for a single event, cost per revenue is an event agnostic and optimizes for users who generate the most revenue, be it purchase, subscription, or an ad revenue event. I'll just give you an example. If there are 3 people who buy products, which is $1 each, and there's 1 user who buys a product, which is $10, I think your ML, your data crunching is best off when you're analyzing that user base that are high value. Take signals of what's really working, what are the sites they are on, what kind of creatives have been served to them. You slice and dice that data, and then I try and acquire more of that user base. So customers transitioning from CPA to CPR, for us, we've seen at least a 36% increase in ROAS. So I would say, in summary, that is the magic metric to optimize towards.
Thank you for the explanation. And Eran, do you have anything that you want to add on to it?
I think Shiraz explained it perfectly. Like this entire, evolution of the marketers also from measuring, they even started like from CPR, even before then there was like CPM and CPC campaigns, like in the very early days, but obviously it wasn't enough. Then they were trying to optimize on installs. But today it's clear to everyone that they want to look at more of the down funnel. So think about, again, retention of the KPIs, kind of thing about the CPAs. And ideally, exactly as everyone kind of thinking about it, ROAS is always the king of KPIs. If you were able to optimize the ROAS, it's much easier to make decisions on when you can scale campaigns as such.
Great. So Shiraz and Eran has explained the main KPIs to optimize the campaigns. And Shiraz, so Liftoff and Vungle were ranked as one of the top performing acquisition channels. And what do you have found to be most critical to support these acquisition campaigns?
A few. I'm just going to take a few minutes to go through that, but I should say it's a combination of many factors in a true cross-functional effort. It's just not one function within the company that leads to these successes. The first and foremost is being highly consultative with our clients to understand, their business models, user flow within the app, definition of success, KPIs, competitive benchmarks, which is an important one. Second is to understand setup. And I think, for companies which are fully online, in which, you have every touch point happening online, you have the final success event also happening online. I think that's a very powerful place to be in, because there's a lot of data that's being generated. So setups are important in terms of post-packs, attribution, creative assets, which, we'll touch upon later on. Creatives is a very big contributor to success, and how this compares with historical best setups and outcomes from a country or a vertical perspective. And then just to add on, creatives play a big role in the outcome, and we've made some very deep investments in terms of both technology as well as specialized teams of creative experts. Thirdly, I think this is one of the foundational pillars of Liftoff plus Vungle, which is our deep machine learning technologies, is at the core of success. Every campaign goes through a learning phase to then ramp up and provide performance at scale. Being a global company with international and local supply partnerships, we are able to transcend boundaries seamlessly. And lastly, it's a true partnership, which is founded on being transparent and sharing data and information to bring out the best for our clients. There is a lot of deep partnership, which is based on trust and sharing of data, which is both ways around, and that sets the foundation for really taking these campaigns to the moon.
Great. So one of the factor that you talked about, or one of the key points that you talked about, is the creative. So is there any best practices for optimizing creatives, or do you see any format of creative that works well these days?
Unfortunately, there is no magic mantra for creatives, right? There is no one size fits all, and I think that's true to the nature of everything that we do. Everything's bespoke, it's customized, but our creative team works with a simple mantra: create a simple, clear creative strategy to make KPIs achievable. We have a standard checklist of creative assets that we ask of our clients. We also ask for all sizes so that there's widest distribution. Some of the assets, if I were to just kind of run through the checkbox, would be app screenshots, branding images, app icons, brand safe copy, app store links, brand safety guidelines, and so on. Specifically, I think if you take gaming as a big segment, videos work very well. Half of our exchange inventory is vast video, so providing videos in both portrait and landscape, 30 seconds, 15-second durations, and some new innovations have come in that, which I'll talk to in a bit, will enable ML to access all video inventories for the campaign. What we've also seen is if you can highlight the in-app behavior to users to give them a preview of what's actually going to happen in the app when they download, there is a higher CTR and a higher chance of success. So, high definition screenshots or videos of in-app workings definitely help. In sales, there is an adage: always be closing. For our creative team, that adage is always be A/B testing. A/B tests point to a combination of elements that attract new users to download your app. And once we have that ideal combination, we can keep optimizing creatives to uphold good performance. On performance, for performance campaigns, creative also degrades quickly. So that's also one reason why we constantly need to keep A/B testing and coming up with newer concepts. You would also ask me about new formats. From our perspective, I think we see two things: long form videos, which was frankly a surprise for us, but this is something we're doubling down on, and then playables. Long form videos, because I think you get to show a lot more of the value proposition within the video, and playables from a gameplay perspective just lets you interact with the ad unit to give a preview of what's to come, and that sort of leads to higher conversion rates.
Great, thank you for your information on the creative, and those are definitely useful. So we also have so many changes these days. So for example, last year we have a massive iOS update, and today we also have Google who is announcing the privacy sandbox. So how did the latest privacy changes affect acquisition strategy? Eran, do you want to lead us on it?
Yeah, of course. So when you think about acquisition strategy, obviously the privacy changes of the last year has been a huge effect, massive effect on the entire industry. And I think now with both Apple and Google kind of presenting their plans or their perspective, I think it's clear to see that both are kind of trying to push the industry to rely less on specific device level data like IDFAs or GID, and think about more of like anonymized and aggregated data later on, right? So it's the entire trend of like the privacy changes that's pushing everyone there. So as a bit more context for the audiences that we have here. So most people are already familiar with Apple's ATT changes from last year, basically the pop-up that basically allows you to have IDFA only as opt-in, only if you allow consent. And we see among our customers and generally in the industry that roughly 20% of users actually allow you to get to their IDFA. So it's a relatively small number of users, and advertisers obviously want to see much more of the users to understand their marketing performance. And what they're doing is using either probabilistic matching for some of the networks or SK network, of course, which is Apple's aggregated framework. So people are pretty familiar with that. But what's new for us now, just from the last month, is Google has now announced their long-term plans to also deprecate GAID. And GAID is pretty much the Android version of the IDFA, basically. Now, Google has decided to do things very differently from Apple. Apple decided to just like drop a bomb in a minute and really didn't have much time for the industry to prepare. Google basically announced that these are long-term plans. It's going to happen in at least 2 years from now. And they basically say, we're open to feedback from the community to prepare for this. And they've released tons of new tools and frameworks, which are super interesting. To be honest, they're more powerful than SK networks by Apple. Probably they've learned some of the challenges that Apple had with their framework. And they're providing more tools to still optimize for acquisition, even without GAID. So everything is, of course, very, very new, and there's like still new content being released. We talk about it a lot also in our blog posts, in our live events. So definitely things are going to be developed. But I think generally speaking, with the privacy changes, the strategy is to think about how you can rely more on aggregated information when you measure your campaigns and contextual targeting to really drive your performance.
Great, thank you. So I guess like there's a lot more that we can do with even though there are lots of changes, we do have some solution for that. So I just want to jump back to Mintegral part. Cynthia, so Mintegral was the top performer on Singular ROI index. And what do you think are some main factors that drove your success with the publishers?
Well, I think just as what Shiraz has mentioned previously, there are many factors that contribute to this result, and it's a result of teamwork as well. Like product team, operation team, algorithm team, all of them have made some changes last year to contribute to this progress. But just roughly speaking, I think from the strategy perspective, I would like to explain two main factors into our optimization strategies to improve the ROAS, the ROI of the campaigns. The first one is the user level optimization. Yeah, and the other one is the publisher level optimization. So firstly, when we look into the user level optimization, what we have done is to keep upgrading our algorithm to let it better target appropriate users for each campaign. And that's why we encourage advertisers to grant us the access of event prospects as much as possible, because this can be very much helpful to increase the algorithm's user learning and machine learning efficiency. And furthermore, we have separated algorithm logics for different verticals. This is kind of very big change for us last year, because I think at the very beginning, Mintegral was known for hyper-casual oriented platform, but now we are totally not. We are changing the model because we are building some new algorithm system for other verticals like puzzle genres, like hardcore genres and utility apps. Yeah, we have built different logics, different machine learning models for different verticals. Yeah, and in this way, we have increased the system capability of matching different inventories for different verticals. Yeah, and next, regarding the sub-publisher optimization strategies, we support multiple product functions on our platform, such as the whitelist, blacklist setting, the tier price setting based on sub-publisher level. Especially, I think the price tier setting function proves to be a very effective function on our platform, as through this function, advertisers are able to adjust the bid rates according to the different performance of each sub-publisher. Yeah, and this move can definitely help them better target the good quality inventories with higher bid rates. Yeah, so advertisers one more thing I would like to mention in the end is that advertisers can find all the sub-publisher level report totally transparent on Mintegral's platform. And I think this is very helpful as well, because it helps the advertisers, even if they just use self-serving platform, they are able to adjust the bid rates based on sub-publisher. Yeah, and so as to optimize their ROAS, the ROI of their campaign. I think that's the main reasons that why we can make the progress last year.
Great, thank you, Cynthia, for the useful information. So now we've covered a lot of the fundamental understanding of the growth loop and also the scaling the acquisition growth part. And now we kind of want to dive deeper into the monetization part specifically. So Cynthia, I want to ask you, like, what are some top KPIs publishers should measure and optimize when looking at the monetization?
Well, I think there are many indicators regarding monetization, like eCPM, fill rate, ARPU, a lot of things. But I think the key metrics that the publishers need to focus on. Sorry, I think there's some noise from my side. I think the key metrics from that the publishers need to focus on ARPU, LTV, and user retention. Yeah, and one of the suggestions I would love to give to the publishers is that they can keep doing some tests and trying to find out the best balance point between the ad watching frequency on user level and eCPM. Yeah, for some games, maybe just making an example, for some games, maybe one user should watch the ads 5 times per day to maximize the revenue, the monetizing revenue, and still the user retention is very stable, and the eCPM is stable too. So in this case, the more frequency of ads watching, the better for the publishers to maximize their monetizing revenue. Yeah. However, in this case, if the publisher is just showing the ads to one user 3 times per day, then they are actually losing some potential value of the traffic. Yeah. So my suggestion is to focus on ARPU, LTV, and user retention, and try to do some A/B tests to find the best balance point between those metrics.
Okay, so you kind of mentioned about the LTV and also their user retention. And one thing that I'm curious is that, is there any way to balance the monetization and so also the user retentions? Like, for example, is there any way to maximize the ARPU without harming or losing the user retention?
Yeah, I think I have mentioned a little bit already as well. So there are many factors that can affect users' retention. For example, the ad watching frequency, just as I mentioned just now. And also, except for that, maybe some details, even the timing of the skip button. So when is the skip button showing up on the ads, on the reward video, can also have some influence on the user retention. And also other factors like the ad formats, the ad placements, or even the ad templates can have influence. So the best practice that I have observed from some of my clients is that they would do service of other competitors before designing their own ad formats and ad placements and ad templates. Yeah, they will even ask for some suggestions from my side, from their ad network partner side, to see what their competitors are doing to design the best templates and ad placements. Yeah, and after going live, they will keep monitoring the data and keep doing some A/B tests to find out the best point, the balance point, like how many times should one user watch the ads per day on their game to make sure that the user retention is stable and also that they can maximize the revenue. Or they will also do some tests to see when is the best timing for X button, for the skippable button on the reward video or interstitial video to show up. Yeah, they do some tests to find the best balance line.
Great. And do you also see any other interesting trends that the publishers are doing these days to increase the user LTV?
Sure. I think, except from the points that I mentioned, like doing A/B tests to find out the balance point and to like do some service of what other competitors are doing. I think aside that, what I have mentioned is one interesting trend in the market that I have found that is more and more hybrid genres are emerging in the market recently, as I observed. So I see that more and more our publishers are trying to combine different genres into one game. For example, even if this is a hyper-casual publisher, they were trying to add some concepts of puzzle game or word game or like idle. They will add some different concepts into their game, and so as to increase the user retention and yes, and also keep the low CPI when they do the marketing promotions. Yes.
Great, thank you for the answer. Just another note before jumping to the other session. Please feel free to ask any questions through the Q&A session in the Zoom panel, and we will be able to answer you later in the live Q&A. So let's jump back into the acquisition strategy part and learn about how to increase engagement and retain the highest LTV users. So Shiraz, I'm gonna get back to you and ask, could you please guide us through some use cases for retargeting campaigns?
Sure. I'll start with low funnel. Anybody who is on an e-commerce site, abandons a shopping cart, so adds to cart and leaves. Folks that have bought maybe a pair of boots, and then you want to cross-sell, a hat to go with those boots. So any cross-sells, upsells, failed payments, for instance. There's this intent to buy, but your credit card has failed, and you want to sort of reach out to those users whilst they are in that mindset. So I'd say low funnel would be, some examples would be these three: abandoned shopping carts, upsells, cross-sells, failed payments. Mid funnel would be maybe you have a user that matches a certain kind of a segment behaviorally, but they're not sort of engaging in the same way as a larger group. So you want to put in some offers to them, get them to sort of nudge them to come back and maybe take an action. So that could be a mid-funnel re-engagement. Install an app but fail to complete a conversion event, so pretty similar to what I mentioned. And upper funnel is more re-engagement, right? Reactivating dormant users, app reopens, somebody who's just installed an app and shortly after that has uninstalled, opened once initially, and 2-3 days have gone by and they haven't opened the app. I think these would be some of those use cases from a re-engagement, from an engagement perspective, as well as re-engagement or retargeting from an action perspective, which would be lower down the funnel.
Great, thank you. So Shiraz talked about some use cases that retargeting campaigns can be used. Well, now, what do you think are some good time or the best timing to start a retargeting campaign, even for a new brand? Like, when do you think is the good timing for that?
I'm going to start by quoting some stats. These are from some known data sources. We put out an app trends report, which mirrors some of these trends. So in general, 25% of users continue to interact with the apps on day one, drops off to 48% from day 1 to day 3. And by day 7, 65% of the users are lost. And this shows how important it is to do retargeting at the start of the user life cycle. But again, there is no magic formula or metric saying, hey, you should do at day 1 or day 7. I think it all boils down to knowing your customer journey. Every app is different. Every app within a larger portfolio of apps is different because different users use it. There are different behavioral trends. So I think a good way is to start mapping customer journey and finding all important touch points, bottlenecks, challenges that your customers may encounter. This would need a strong data sciences team that continuously is crunching numbers and giving feedback, understanding insights, as well as funnel drop-offs and so on. I'll give you an example. for a mobile game that typically sees the first purchase come in after 7 days, and that's what your data is telling you, it makes really not too much sense initiating a re-engagement campaign on day 2 or day 3, because bulk of the folks are going to take an action within 7 days. So might as well save your dollars. So I would say knowing your customer journey is key to cost efficiency as well as performance efficiencies. Give your users time to convert. And a better approach is to implement a grace period. Now, how long is the grace period? Should a grace period be there? I think is a function of your BI data sciences team. One last point I'd like to make here, and this is something that we've seen, I think in large pockets, is most marketers think about retargeting much after UA has scaled, much after their initial users have churned. I think to be really successful, you need to do UA and retargeting together, not necessarily retargeting on day 1, but in tandem. And the best practice would be to use one partner so that all of the data is aggregated in one place. You can very clearly understand your blackout periods, your grace periods, and then get the best from the limited budget that one has. This makes, I think, this avoids misattribution and reduces complexity also where possible. Of course, there will be instances where you have to work with multiple partners, but initially when you're starting out, it would be good to have one partner serving you across the funnel rather than spreading that budget across multiple partners, which again has a different complexity.
Great. So make sure to look at your data and try to map all your journey to find the right timing for the re-engagement. So Cynthia, do you see any value in cross-promotion between multiple publishers' apps?
Yes, I think cross-promotion is very much helpful promotion method because it can help to increase the conversion rate by around 50% to 100%, I think in average, according to the data of our platform. And as a result, the advertiser can drop the CPI bid and save their campaign costs because the conversion rate has dramatically increased. And also, users coming cross-promotion campaigns shows a much higher retention, and they shows more stable, and they have higher loyalty of the games as well. So I do agree that for cross-promotion, if the advertisers they are qualifying to do that, they have several games and the inventory pool is very much similar, then we highly suggest them to have the separated budget for cross promotions.
Great. And Eran, do you have any other ideas that you want to explain about?
On cross promotion, I think just adding to Cynthia's point, I think we see that for customers with multiple apps, especially in the gaming, of course, it's hugely effective for increasing the lifetime of the user across the portfolio, right? So thinking about, again, the type of the users or the behavior in the first game, and if there's like a nice other game that you can kind of continue the journey of these, you can effectively continue getting more value from the users and retain them for longer. So I've seen also in companies that have multiple games, sometimes they have a dedicated person just to manage their cross-promotion efforts. That's how much value they see in these. And one last advantage that I think is really interesting is also with the privacy changes that we've just talked about earlier. With cross-promotion, you have so much more data because it's all your own data, basically. So for example, identifiers like the IDFV in iOS, in Android, you have like ASAD, which is similar. It remains the same between all your apps and you always get it. It's even if you don't show the pop-up, which is amazing. It means that if a user used your one game and then moved to the other game, you would know the entire funnel without the need for their consent. So definitely a lot of advantages and a lot of potential for cross-promotion, in my opinion.
Thank you. And so, Eran, you just mentioned about this, the importance of the first-party data. And could you explain more on how important it is and how it will affect the re-engagement campaigns?
Right. So yeah, of course, when thinking about the LTV and kind of the general retention of the users, and I think Shiraz also explained perfectly, or the use cases that you can use re-engagement, then the question is, how can I also optimize the most, or get the most of the targeting of re-engagement? And part of the challenge with privacy changes is, again, you're losing a lot of the third-party identifiers out there. So that's why first-party data becomes much more important. And just to clarify, first-party data means everything are the data that you own as a company. So if, for example, a user has registered to your app, either made a login or kind of the sign-up flow, or provide you some information about them, then that's first-party data that you can actually use for anything. So just a classic example with the shopping cart, right? If they abandon their shopping cart, assuming that that user already gave you his email address, suddenly it means that you can send him an email right afterwards to suggest him to return. So that's kind of the classic way. But there are also partnerships with some of the platforms out there in which you can, for example, share a hashed email address, for example, and think about how to use that first-party data for retargeting as well later on.
Great, thank you for your information. So we're kind of in the end part of the webinar, and we just want to kind of summarize the entire context of the webinar today. And Shiraz and Eran and Cynthia, would you like to give us one key takeaway from the webinar today? Eran or Shiraz, either you want to go first?
Sure, I can. Yeah, as I've been in this space for a while now, and the pace of change is only getting faster and faster. As I look at Eran saying in 2 years, Google's going to bring about the change, I think the last 2 years were very, very different. The next 2 years are going to be, I don't think there's too many things that will be the same as today. So the advertising landscape is changing at an unprecedented pace. We're already seeing tracking change, measurement change with ATT, the impact of creative, of how we track creatives, understand that impact is changing. We are looking at Android now to see what's working and then push that on to iOS. And if Android is also changing, the way we measure creatives impact is also changing on the back of very little data coming in from scan. LTV models will have to change. So there's a lot of disruption, evolve, things are evolving. We have to be nimble. It's not a choice anymore. We have to continue to test and partner with businesses that are on top of these changes and are constantly innovating. So I would say that would be my top takeaway for today.
Well, thank you. What about you, Cynthia?
Well, I think because today most of my questions are actually focused on monetization side. So I would like to summarize my takeaway as A/B tests based on user segmentation are always the key to successful monetization strategies. Actually, not only user segmentation, if possible, I would suggest publishers to do some more tests based on vertical segmentations as well and geo segmentations as well.
Great. So it's pretty much about our webinar, the entire webinar today, and we are going to jump into our live Q&A. And in fact, we actually have few questions coming in. So the first question would be, in studios with separate monetization and UA team, how can they work together to enhance the growth loop? And I think either Cynthia or Shiraz can answer on this.
Yes, maybe I can give some insights from my side first. Yeah, guys, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think in studios with separate monetization and UA team, it depends on what kind of category it is. So let's say if this is a hyper casual or casual gaming studio, then I think the first key point is to keep the data transparent between these two teams. Because what I see is that, firstly, from monetization side, you need to analyze the monetization data and reflect it to UA side. What I mean is that, for example, from monetization side, you will get the data of the traffic ARPU, of the LTV, of the eCPM. And according to that data, you can change the offer bid and to change your campaign budget allocation. So the data of monetization side can be made good use of on UA side as well. And on the other hand, it's also important to analyze the UA data and reflect it into the monetization side. So for example, if from UA campaigns, you find that recently the retention rate or the user ROAS has dropped, the campaign ROAS has dropped, then maybe the answer is actually hidden on monetization side, not on UA side. Why I say that is, if the ROAS drop, maybe it's because that you have added too many ad placements, you have increased the user frequency of ad watching on monetization side. That lead to some user lose, to the drop of user retention on UA side. Or maybe it's because you have uploaded your game, upgraded your game, and one of the stage is extremely difficult, and some users just give up from that stage. There can be many reasons, but the data on the other side can always help you to analyze the situation better. So that's why I think if the team is separated, it's very much important for you to keep data transparent between these two teams. And the other tips I would like to give is to make sure that there's no information gap between these two teams, because most of you may be using the same ad network to promote your campaigns as well as doing some monetization. Like for Mintegral, many of the publishers work with us both on advertising side and monetization side. Yeah, then in this case, we have policy, to encourage publishers to work with us both and to increase budgets and also increase their traffic with us. So maybe we will put the publisher on higher priority if they give us more budget on advertiser side. Then on monetization side, maybe we can give them more fill rate as well. So it's possible. So each ad network's policy can be different. So I highly suggest the different teams need to be aligned with every information, every important policy. Or sometimes what I find is that we have already noticed the policy to the monetization team, but the UA team has no idea of that. Yeah, then I think it will have some influence on the efficiency of the teamwork. Yeah, so that's the perspective from my side.
Got it. So the transparency is apparently very important, and the role of each team is important. And one extension question from the previous one is that what's the role of data team in enabling the growth loop? And in this question, I think maybe Eran can give us some information.
Yeah, sure. And I think obviously I'm a bit biased because Singular is kind of a marketing data platform, but a bit similar to everything we've talked about throughout this entire session. And like my kind of top takeaway was it's all about the data, right? So data is the enabler for basically making decisions across the entire loop and operation, from acquisition to monetization to engagement to retention. And the data team is the one who is responsible for providing all the data, right? And I have a lot of work to do, like thinking about collecting all the information from the acquisition, the spend, the attribution, the revenue, think about both in-app purchases, ad revenue. There's a lot of work there for sure. We love working with data teams to try to provide the most data in the most accurate and granular way. And it's clear from what we see from customers, like every team relies on the data team eventually. You see the acquisition teams, the monetization team, the retargeting teams, everyone needs to rely on kind of the centralized databases to understand what's happening, what's the results, and make decisions on the next steps. So the data team role is to enable all of that, basically.
Great. So there's one more question coming in, and I think maybe Shiraz can help answering it. So how do I know what's a good ROI for my campaign, and how long would it take to achieve good ROAS?
How do I know what's a good ROI for my campaign?
Oh, sorry, good ROAS.
ROAS, okay. I would say, there are, to Eran's point, your data tells you the best story. You have some vertical metrics, you could have some country metrics, you could have some proxies by, certain apps that you benchmark yourselves from a competitive landscape perspective, but nothing tells you a better story than your own app. So to track that data across the funnel, apply some advanced data analytics models to understand what is the broad ROI, ROAS that different segments of users are giving versus what typically is the ROAS that's expected of this industry for a tier 1 country like the US or UK would give you an idea then on what is the benchmark that one needs to aim for. But every app monetizes differently, and it's an iterative process, right? You don't get success from the get-go. You don't hit your targets from the get-go. I think you need to start somewhere, and then it's a constant day in, day out iterative process. That just is the loop. What's the second question?
Second question was, how long would it take to achieve a good ROI, good ROAS?
Right. I think that's a pretty interesting question because most ML platforms that are out there require to do a period of data ingestion and learning. You never get a cold start. It's not a Ferrari that you fire up the engine, put the pedal to the metal, and then it just shoot out of the gate. It never happens, right? You have a lot of ads out there. You've got a lot of supply sources. So there is a period in which the ML algorithms learn and then hit a sort of inflection point where you start delivering performance at scale. Typically anywhere between 4 to 6 to 8 weeks. It all depends on, again, what is your vertical? Is it niche? Is it more broad-based? Is it a new fintech niche vertical which is just starting, which will require, I think, slower adoption, which means it'll take a longer time for that campaign to scale up? Or is it crypto, which is super hot now, right? You put it out there, it's well back, it's going to take off. So thumb rule, 4 to 6 weeks or 8 weeks is what one should give a true DSP or an ML platform to be able to learn and then ramp up and start delivering results at scale.
I think, Shana, you're on mute.
I can't hear you.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for your answer. And for now, we only have 1 minute left. And we do have some more questions coming in, but I don't think we have enough time to finish answering all those questions. So we will be answering you through email. And if you have anything that you need from us, you can also tell us through email. And you can also rewatch it through the on-demand that we are going to send you tomorrow. So thank you very much for joining our webinar today. And also thank you, Eran, Shiraz, and Cynthia for the useful information and tips on how to optimize the growth loop and also even the full funnel marketing. And hope it helped you to succeed in marketing and grow your apps and grow with your users.